On the day of our engagement party, my fiancée ran off, hand in hand with an underclassman, in front of everyone. She left me and our parents to deal with the aftermath. Later, my fiancée cut ties with her family, married the underclassman as she'd always wanted, and started the life she had chosen. It wasn't until I returned to the States 6 years later that I saw her again. She was selling things from a small cart outside of school, with 3 children in tow. When I saw Diana Wallace again, she was outside of kindergarten, pushing a small cart and selling handmade toys. It was almost time for school to let out, and the street in front of the private school was lined with luxury cars. She went from one to the next, knocking on windows to sell her knitted yarn flowers and dolls, all while carrying a sleeping child on her back. I was in the back seat working on some documents. Our driver, Mr. Henderson, had been with the Miller family for years, and he recognized her almost immediately. He knew that this haggard, weary woman who looked 40 was my childhood sweetheart, Diana. Diana didn't recognize Mr. Henderson. She was focused only on pushing a knitted doll through the window, desperately making her sales pitch. "Sir, how about one for your child? They're handmade. My own kids have always loved them." The familiar voice made me look up from my work, and my eyes met her obsequious smile. A second later, it was as if she'd been choked. Her sales pitch died in her throat, and her face twisted with embarrassment and shame. We stared at each other for a moment. Just as she was about to speak, I calmly looked back down at my tablet. Mr. Henderson took the hint and raised a privacy partition, cutting her off before she could say a word. That night, I was in my study working when my mother knocked and came in. She tried to chat casually, but then awkwardly brought up Diana. "Frank," she began, "Mr. Henderson told me you saw Diana today." I nodded. My mother looked like she wanted to say more, but was holding back. After a long pause, she asked tentatively, "I heard she's married now, with a few kids. Are you?" I gave a small laugh and explained, "Mom, I'm not avoiding relationships because of her. I'm just completely focused on work, and it's not the right time for me to be with someone." My mother visibly relaxed, then immediately started to scold me playfully. "You're just like your father was at your age, nothing but work on your mind. Your sister Sarah is already married, and you haven't even started looking." I smiled and gently ushered my mother off to bed. Back in my study, I got a message from my childhood friend Chris. It was a screenshot of a conversation he'd had with Diana. Diana had written, "Do you have Frank's number? There's something I need to talk to him about." Chris texted, "I heard she's been asking everyone. My guess is she wants to get back together." I thought for a second, then typed back, "I'm not interested. If she has business, she can make an appointment through the front desk at the office." The second time I saw Diana was at the entrance to my company building. Leo was with her. Ignoring the stares and whispers from passersby, he was dragging her toward Miller Tower, muttering furiously, "He's your old flame. Go to him, sleep with him, and he'll get us jobs. It's a simple transaction." Diana resisted with every fiber of her being, pleading with him. "Leo, you're delusional. I won't do it. I'm not going." Leo spun around and slapped her hard across the face. He pointed a finger at her and screamed, "Don't you dare play the saint with me. If I hadn't gotten involved with you, would my life be this much of a wreck? You owe me this. You go, or I swear I'll strip you naked and leave you right here on the sidewalk." His face was a twisted, ugly mask. He was nothing like the bright, energetic underclassman I remembered, the one who used to dote on Diana and agree to her every whim. The elegant, privileged girl I once knew was now on the ground, her cheek already swelling, crying without any sense of dignity. She refused to move, just lay there sobbing until the police arrived and took them both away. It was only then that she saw me, standing behind a crowd, flanked by my security. Her entire body shuddered, and she quickly looked down, avoiding my eyes. So this was the great love she had thrown everything away for. It was pathetic. I remembered when we were children, my mother used to read us stories where the heroes always lived happily ever after. Diana would always say, "Frank and I are going to be together forever, too." My mother would smile and ask, "Forever is a lifetime, Diana. Do you know how long a lifetime is?" Diana would just stare, confused. Then my mother would gently ruffle our hair and say, "A lifetime is very long. You have to live the whole thing to measure it." We didn't understand what that meant back then, but Diana was always insistent that she and I would be together forever. When we became teenagers, Diana stopped talking about marriage all the time, but she would still stubbornly write Frank Miller and Diana Wallace, together for life, on every wishing well or fountain we passed. Diana had a bright, outgoing personality and was friends with everyone. Back then, she was a little taller than me, and our classmates used to joke that I was her trophy husband. She never said anything, but I knew it bothered her. She started piling food on my plate at every meal. Behind my back, she signed me up for the basketball team and even got our family doctor to draw up a detailed workout regimen for me. I even heard her muttering in her sleep once, "Frank, grow faster, grow faster. I want to be able to wear heels." At our wedding, freshman year of high school, we ended up in different homerooms. Diana wanted to ask her parents to pull some strings and get her moved, but I shut it down. "Diana, don't be that person," I told her. "It's just the classroom next door." She looked at me in disbelief, completely crushed. That was the beginning of a 72-hour Cold War between us. The truth is, I regretted it after the very first day. I wasn't used to her not being there. After school, I tried to apologize, but she just shot me a look and sprinted to her family's car, gone before I could even say anything. After 3 days of the silent treatment, I finally just climbed in her car before her driver could pull away. Diana shouted, "What do you think you're doing? This isn't your car." I ignored her and pulled a rose I had knitted from yarn out of my backpack, holding it out to her. "I was wrong," I said, completely serious. "I do need special treatment. I can't stand that class without you." Her cheeks turned pink, but she scrunched up her face, trying to look stern. "You think you can win me over with a fake flower? Don't I deserve a real one, Frank?" I scratched my head. I tried to pick one from my mom's garden yesterday, but she caught me. She said it wasn't sincere to give a flower someone else grew, so she taught me how to knit one instead. I was up all night making it. "You don't like it?" Diana burst out laughing. "You're an idiot, Frank. Your dad planted that entire garden for your mom. Of course, she wouldn't let you cut her roses. But," she added, taking the yarn flower, "I like this one too. You're forgiven." Leo was an underclassman and worked under Diana in her student government department. I first met him in the dining hall at Northwestern. I had just gotten back from years studying abroad in London, and Diana's attitude toward me had grown distant. She seemed bored when I told her about my time in London, and when I gave her the gift I'd brought back, she offered only a polite, forced smile. I've never been much of a talker, and after she shut down a few of my attempts at conversation, we lapsed into silence. That's when a pair of hands covered her eyes from behind. "Guess who?" a cheerful voice said. Even with half her face covered, I could see her expression light up. She laughed, drawing out her words playfully. "Oh, I wonder who it could be? This is so hard." The guy dropped his hands and leaned in close to her. "It's me." Diana laughed and pinched his cheek. They started joking around right in front of me, completely oblivious, acting more intimate than we, the actual couple, ever did. I cleared my throat. It was only then that they seemed to remember I was there. Diana quickly put some space between them and made the introductions. "Frank, this is Leo. He's in my department, an underclassman. Leo, this is Frank Miller. He's a senior who just got back from a year in London. He's my boyfriend." Her expression didn't change, but the word boyfriend seemed to burn her tongue. I glanced at her, but said nothing, just gave Leo a brief nod. Leo said something exaggerated like, "A pleasure to finally meet the legend," but his eyes were hostile. Soon after, our date was cut short by some emergency student government meeting. As Diana left with Leo, I watched them walk away, their shoulders bumping, playfully poking each other. They looked completely in sync. It occurred to me that Diana and I hadn't been that playful with each other in a long time. Our conversations were usually brief, mostly about business or family matters. I had always thought I was the person who knew her best. But listening to her talk with Leo about video games, new music, and movies, I realized how little I actually knew about her passions. I started to think that maybe I'd gotten too comfortable, that I'd taken her presence for granted and missed the ways she was changing. I decided I needed to make an effort to understand the person she was becoming. I'm a direct person, so after figuring out what I wanted to say, I went to her dorm that evening to wait for her. She smiled when she saw me. "What's up?" she asked. I took her hand and looked her in the eyes. "I'm sorry, Diana," I said seriously. "I haven't been a very good boyfriend." I told her everything I'd been thinking that afternoon. At first, she looked confused, but as I spoke, her expression softened. When I finally finished, she let out a little laugh. "Oh, Frank, you're really something else," she said. "You have no idea how much it means to me that you'd think about all this. Don't worry, you're already the best boyfriend in the world. I was just a little awkward today because it's been so long. I wasn't mad at you, so please don't worry." She hugged me, tilting her head back to look at me with shining eyes. "Leo and I are just friends. If it makes you uncomfortable, I'll be more careful about how we act. His family doesn't have much, and it was a struggle for him to get into Northwestern, so I just try to look out for him a bit. That's all it is. You're the one I love. I wanted to marry you since we were kids." Years later, I was inspecting one of our properties at the mall when Leo stopped me. He called out from a distance, acting like we were old friends who hadn't seen each other in years. "Frank, long time no see. You remember me, right?" He had a greasy smile and was wearing a wrinkled suit, his gut pushing out against the fabric. He made a move to come closer, as if to clap me on the shoulder. My security guard immediately stepped between us, and my assistant said smoothly, "I'm sorry, Mr. Miller is currently working and isn't available for personal matters." Leo looked awkward for a second before forcing a laugh. "Come on, we go way back. I'm sure you could spare a minute for Diana's sake, right?" I raised an eyebrow. "Who's Socket?" Leo tried to step forward again, all smiles, but my guard blocked him. He said, trying to be clever, "Diana Wallace. You remember her, don't you? It's been a while for you two, too. We should all catch up." I allowed a cold laugh. "Of course I remember her. Isn't she your wife now?" "Your epic love story was the talk of the town for a while. As for catching up, I'll pass. I don't know either of you well, and I have no interest in the details of your marriage." I glanced at where my guard was holding him back, and "You should probably keep your distance from me from now on. Being pinned to the ground isn't a pleasant experience, is it?" 6 years ago, after Diana and I had made up, she had started to distance herself from Leo. And just like today, he had waited for me on the road leading to my house. It was right before Diana's birthday, and I was burning the candle at both ends, juggling my classes and my internship to free up time for her, so my patience was already thin. He had somehow gotten past security into our gated community and blocked my car. I got out, my face grim, and he launched into a tirade. "Don't you think you're being a little controlling, Frank? Is Diana not allowed to have male friends? Or are you just insecure?" he sneered. "Afraid that if she meets enough people, she'll realize she can do better?" I just scoffed. "You think I'm not good enough for her? And who is?" "You." I let my eyes travel over him from head to toe. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he said defiantly, "You just won the birth lottery. If I had your resources, I could do 10 times better than you. I may not have been born into money, but I'm willing to work for it. I'll build my own success. And one day, guys like you, who are nothing without their family name, will be looking up at me from the dirt." His little speech was so absurd, I had to laugh. I realized he was just a bitter, resentful clown, so I turned to walk away. But he wouldn't let it go and lunged at me. In the next instant, my bodyguard had him pinned to the ground. The difference in their size and strength was so great that he cried out in pain. Just then, I heard Diana's furious voice. "Frank, what are you doing?" I turned toward the sound, just in time to get hit in the face with her purse. She stormed over, pushed my bodyguard away, and helped Leo to his feet. She glared at me, her eyes blazing. "When did you become one of those spoiled rich kids who thinks he can have his goons beat up normal people?" I touched the bridge of my nose where her bag had hit me. "I didn't do anything," I explained patiently. "He came to me first." "Don't make excuses," she cut me off. "I can't believe you're a bully, Frank. I'm so disappointed in you." Without another glance at me, she helped Leo into her car and drove away. I just stood there in silence for a long time, suddenly feeling a deep sense of exhaustion. The next day, Diana came and apologized. She said she'd been too harsh, that she was just worried and had overreacted. That was the first time I ever asked her, "Diana, do you really still want to be with me?" She seemed taken aback for a moment, then answered firmly that she wanted to be with me forever. "Frank, that's never changed," she said. "I've already spoken to Leo. He won't bother you again." I nodded and let it go. Soon, it was her birthday. I booked out her favorite restaurant, bought tickets to a new movie I knew she'd like, and even made a playlist of her favorite songs for the car. But on the day itself, she seemed completely distracted. When I went to her house to pick her up that morning, she had just woken up and was still in her pajamas, eating brunch. She looked surprised to see me, and it was only when she saw the flowers in my hand that she remembered it was her birthday. "I'm so sorry," she said, pressing her palms together. "I stayed up way too late watching a movie last night." I just smiled and ruffled her hair, telling her it was fine. It was her day, we could go at her pace. While she went to get ready, their butler brought me some coffee and said with a smile, "It was good of you to stay up so late watching that movie with her, Mr. Miller. I'm impressed you're up so early." I froze. I had gone to bed early to be rested for our date, but I didn't want to make a scene on her birthday. Still, something felt off. When she came back downstairs, I asked, "So, did you watch that movie alone last night?" She hesitated for a fraction of a second before smiling. "I was on a video call with some of my girlfriends. It wasn't your kind of thing, so I didn't bother you." I nodded. "I don't care what it is. I just want to spend time with you." She linked her arm through mine, her smile sweet as sugar. "Ah, you're so clingy, Frank. Okay. I'll invite you next time, I promise." In the car, she was glued to her phone, a bright smile on her face as she texted. At a red light, I asked, "Who are you talking to?" She didn't answer, so I asked again. "Just friends," she said, not looking up from her screen. "Wishing me a happy birthday." It would be rude not to write back. I just hummed in response, but I could see from the corner of my eye that she was still in the same iMessage conversation. She was talking to one person. I told myself not to read into it, but I couldn't help but picture Leo's face. I pushed down the uneasy feeling in my gut. It's her birthday, I told myself. Her happiness is all that matters today. When we got out of the car, I took her hand. She seemed surprised for a second, then put her phone in her purse and finally gave me her full attention. Our dates usually involve high-end stores or art auctions, but based on my new intel, I took her to an arcade for the first time. She was thrilled. She dragged me from one game to the next, and I could tell she was genuinely having fun, which made me happy. We pooled our tickets at the end and got a giant teddy bear, almost as tall as she was. She couldn't stop hugging it. The date was a success. The only thing that bothered me was how she'd pull out her phone to text every spare second she got. After dinner, I was about to pull out the movie tickets when her phone rang. She answered, then told me anxiously that there was an emergency with the student government, and she had to go right away. She seemed genuinely stressed, so I drove her back to campus. She got out and hurried toward the student union building, but then she suddenly turned around and knocked on my window. I rolled it down as she leaned in and quickly kissed my cheek. I had a really wonderful day, Frank, she said, her face flushed. Thank you. In that moment, my heart soared. I drove away from the campus feeling lighter than air. Then I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the giant bear sitting alone in the back seat. I thought about it, then decided to wait for her. It was her birthday, after all. I wanted to be with her until the very end of it. So I waited in my car until midnight. And then I saw her walking out of the main gate, side by side with Leo. They were walking so close. They weren't holding hands, but on the wide, empty path, their shoulders kept brushing against each other. It was a subtle, intimate dance, a test of boundaries. It reminded me of us back in high school, leaning over a textbook with our shoulders and heads pressed together, pretending to study a problem when we were really just testing how close we could get. I finally understood the source of my unease. It was the familiarity of it all. I got out of the car, pulled the giant bear from the back seat, and tossed it onto the pavement in front of them. The two of them, lost in their own world, finally noticed me. The smile on Diana's face froze. I saw a flash of panic in her eyes as she instinctively put some distance between herself and Leo. Frank, she started, but the word just hung in the air. My voice was cold. Is this your emergency meeting? She shook her head frantically, trying to stammer out an explanation. Leo, seeing her struggle, stepped in. It was my fault. I lied to her, he said. I knew it was her birthday, so I got her a cake and downloaded that movie she wanted to see. I tricked her into coming. I'm not trying to cause trouble, Frank. It's just that you've always been her only option. I'm just giving her a second one. Let's call it a fair competition. I stared at him. Competition? She's my girlfriend. Do you have any idea what you're doing? I do, he said. But feelings change. And who's to say what she feels for you is even love? You rich kids who grow up together, it's basically an arranged marriage. Are you so sure she won't change her mind once she sees what else is out there? His words were dripping with contempt, as if he'd figured out the secret truth of the world. He was an idiot. I turned to Diana, who hadn't said a word. Is that what you think, too? She quickly shook her head, her eyes welling up with tears. After a long silence, I sighed. Come on, I said. I'll take you home. She struggled to lift the giant bear and started walking toward me. She'd only taken a few steps when Leo grabbed the bear's arm, stopping her. He looked at her. Diana, are you really choosing him? Diana froze. She stared at Leo for a long moment, then turned and met my eyes. I stood by my car, my gaze lowered, saying nothing. Then, she let go of the bear and walked quickly over to me. Her look told me everything. She had made her choice. It was after midnight by the time I got her home. I hesitated, then said, Diana, I have to go out of town with my father for a few days on business. Maybe we should both use this time to cool off and really think about our future. Her face went pale. Are you breaking up with me? No, I said. I really do have to leave for work. It just seems like a good time for us to think. I don't want you to be unhappy. She gave a strained nod. She looked so lost as she walked into her house that I couldn't bring myself to say anything else. But the truth was, when she asked if I wanted to break up for a moment, I had. We didn't speak for the next few days. I did a lot of thinking, and the idea of breaking up weighed more and more heavily on my mind. The day I flew back to Chicago, a massive storm hit. Our plane had to circle O'Hare for what felt like an eternity before we could land. When I got home, the Wallace's butler was waiting for me. He said the storm had destroyed the rose garden I'd planted for Diana, and she was out in the downpour trying to salvage the plants. He wanted me to go and reason with her. I had planted those roses for her myself on her 16th birthday. They were my gift to her on the day we officially started dating. I didn't hesitate. I went with the butler, and sure enough, there she was covered in mud, frantically trying to move the ruined roses into pots. It was a hopeless effort. I knelt in the mud and wrapped my arms around her. She went still for a second, then collapsed against me, sobbing. "I'm sorry, Frank. Please don't leave me," she cried. "I really want to marry you." As we neared graduation, our family started planning the engagement. I could tell her heart wasn't in it, so I told her that if she had second thoughts, we could call it off. I assured her it wouldn't affect the business alliance between the Millers and the Wallaces. She just smiled and said, "Of course I want to. I wanted to marry you my whole life." So the engagement party went ahead as scheduled, a huge event for all our family's business and social contacts. The celebration, however, was short-lived. Right before the official announcement, as Diana watched the entrance with an expectant look in her eyes, the heavy ballroom doors swung open. Leo walked in, wearing a cheap suit and carrying a bouquet of roses. He walked right up to her. "You once told me you never get to make your own choices," he said, holding out the roses. "Today, I'm giving you one. Diana, I'm here to take you away." As Leo took Diana's hand, her father finally snapped out of his shock. "Diana," he roared, "do you have any idea what you are doing? Do you know where you are? You are embarrassing this entire family." Diana's eyes filled with tears, but she held Leo's hand tightly and shouted back, "Dad, I have done everything you've ever asked of me my entire life. For once, I want to choose my own life. Before I met Leo, I would have married Frank, even though I don't love him. But I have Leo now, and I want to be with him forever." Then she turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "Frank, I'm sorry, but I can't live a life that's just about business deals." Her performance was dramatic, but all I felt was the bitter irony. "Business deals?" I asked. "Diana, didn't I tell you? I told you that if you weren't happy, we could call this off at any time, and it would have no effect on our family's partnership. You said nothing before the engagement. You said nothing during all the planning. Did you have to wait for this exact moment to humiliate me, just to prove how pure and noble your love is? Our families were an unbreakable corporate alliance long before this wedding was ever on the table. The Miller and Wallace business networks were far too intertwined for one marriage to make or break them. But now, with her grand speech, she had painted herself as a victim sacrifice for the family fortune. She stood there looking like she had broken free, leaving me behind as the puppet still caught in the strings. It was nauseating. Diana fell silent, her gaze a mixture of pity and accusation. Seeing her falter, Leo stepped in front of her, puffing out his chest like some kind of hero. "Our love is not for you to judge, Frank," he declared. "I came here to get Diana, but also show you what it looks like to fight back. You're a prisoner of your family, too. I hope you'll let Diana go, wish us well, and maybe one day find the courage to break out of your own cage." Listening to him, I finally understood their shared delusion. They were a couple of kids with main character syndrome. She thought she was a princess trapped in a tower, and he was the brave knight come to rescue her. They were lost in some cheap fantasy novel plot, convinced they were taking on the whole world. I suddenly felt exhausted. There's no point in arguing with fools. Up on the stage, Mrs. Wallace was clutching her chest, looking faint. Seizing the moment when all eyes were on her, Leo grabbed Diana's hand, and they ran. In the end, my father took the stage, announced the engagement was off, and turned the event into a regular cocktail party. A few days later, Diana was brought back to her parents' house. They dragged her over to see me and demanded she apologize. "What did I do wrong?" she screamed. "I just want to live my own life. Why won't any of you just let me be?" "Frank, just because you're miserable, does that mean you have to destroy my happiness too? The only difference between you and Leo is that you were born lucky. He understands me. He's 100 times better than you, 1,000 times. Why do you all look down on him? Why can't you just accept him?" She was hysterical. She had convinced herself that the only reason her parents wouldn't accept Leo was because of me. The truth was, her parents had done a background check on him. He was a kid from a poor town on a scholarship. He talked a big game about being ambitious, but he had no real accomplishments to his name besides decent grades. His family situation was complicated. He had 4 older sisters who had all dropped out of school to work and pay his tuition. His parents were old-fashioned and clearly favored their only son, which had clearly given Leo a subconscious belief that women were somehow lesser than men. He was subtle about it, but you could see it in his assumption that women from wealthy families were just pawns in business deals. Of course, when her parents tried to tell Diana any of this, she accused them of slandering him and refused to listen. During that time, Leo started hanging around outside her gated community every day. When he couldn't get in, he started a TikTok live stream right there at the gate. The title of his stream was, "My Love, I'm fighting with you. He'd hold up a photo of them together and tell his viewers that his girlfriend's evil rich parents were forcing her into an arranged marriage. He claimed she was being held prisoner in her own home for defying them, and this was the only way he could support her. His streams started getting more and more viewers, even hitting the local trending charts on the app. It didn't take long for people to figure out who he was talking about, and the story of our disastrous engagement party went viral. Public opinion was split. Half the internet was weeping over their epic love story, while the other half correctly pointed out that he was a homewrecker and she was a cheater. As the story blew up, the comment sections on the social media pages for Miller and Wallace products became war zones. Then, the official Wallace Corporation Twitter account posted a statement. It announced that Diana Wallace was no longer the designated heir and had been removed from the family will. It was a public disownment. Right after that, I used my own Twitter account to set the record straight. I told the whole story of our 22 years together, from childhood friends to our first love to our relationship. I made it clear I wasn't some arranged business partner. I was the guy who got cheated on at his own engagement party. Diana was kicked out of her family's house. The first thing she did was go with Leo to get a marriage license. I found out later that while the whole social media drama was unfolding, her parents had given her one final ultimatum. You can be with him, they told her, but not as a Wallace. You have to choose this family or your love. She immediately signed the legal documents in front of her, waiving her rights to the family inheritance. I don't need any of it, she said. I just need Leo. After that, I had a long talk with my parents, and my father agreed to put me in charge of our European markets. It was a move I'd wanted to make for a while, but I'd hesitated, thinking it would be unfair to uproot a new wife and move her across the ocean. Now, with no wedding on the horizon, I was free to focus on my career. I spent the next 6 years in London and rarely came back to the States. In that time, my sister Sarah got married and had a daughter. My niece is 4 now. The new Wallace heir is a cousin from a branch of the family. He's only in middle school, but he's brilliant and ambitious. No one ever talked about Diana anymore, and Leo never made that name for himself in Chicago. At least, not one that ever reached our ears. When I moved back to Chicago 6 years later, Chris threw a welcome home party for me at our old favorite bar. In the middle of the celebration, someone mentioned that Diana had been asking around for my number. I told Chris to tell her she can make an appointment through the front desk if it's business, I said calmly, and my friends all laughed. An appointment? Get real. She can't even get past security at Miller Tower, Chris scoffed. You didn't know? She's been blacklisted from every company and property associated with the Miller and Wallace families. That opened the floodgates, and Chris told me everything he'd heard. After the Wallaces disowned her, no one in Chicago connected to our families would hire either of them. So Leo decided to start a business in a different city with a friend. Their seed money came from Diana, selling the one condo and car that were in her own name. All her other assets had been frozen. They mortgaged the condo and sold the car for the loan. But the business failed, and they lost every penny. That's when Leo convinced her to come back to Chicago and ask her family for a handout. She fought him on it, but eventually she went to her father. Mr. Wallace wouldn't even see her. He had his secretary tell her that the property and car she'd already sold were the last thing she would ever get from them. This was right after their first daughter was born. Diana was desperately asking everyone she knew for job leads for Leo, but he was too proud. He wouldn't take anything that wasn't a management role, so he ended up unemployed for a year. To make ends meet, Diana got a job as a cashier at a grocery store. The once glamorous Diana Wallace, now a checkout girl. I heard some of her old friends used to go to the store just to gawk at her. She and Leo fought all the time. She'd beg him to get a job, but he was too good for every opening, and the jobs he wanted, he couldn't get. This went on until Diana was pregnant with her second child. Leo finally got a job doing food delivery, but he barely ever worked. When their second child was born, another girl, Leo didn't even let her rest and recover. He pushed her to go back to work immediately, saying that a couple should build their dream together. Leo's family had been completely absent until Diana's third child was born, a boy. Suddenly, his parents showed up and moved into their tiny rental apartment, claiming they were there to help with the grandson. So now Diana works all day at the store, comes home and cooks and cleans for that whole family, and then works a part-time job at night. After his business failed, Leo started drinking. A lot. And he gets violent. His parents are a piece of work, too. They actually tried to show up at the Wallace estate to cause a scene when they first got to Chicago. After security threw them out a few times, they gave up, but they take it all out on Diana. You saw her selling those toys? His parents force her to do that on her days off. If she doesn't make enough money, they won't let her eat. Later that night, as the party was breaking up, we saw Diana outside the bar. She had her little cart set up on the sidewalk, but it was obvious she was waiting for me. Her exhausted eyes lit up when she saw me emerge. "Frank," she started, taking a step forward, but she froze when she saw the mocking looks from my friends. "Can I speak with you alone for a moment?" I declined politely. "It's late. If you have something to say, Mrs. Leo, you can say it here." Her face grew even paler. Her hands, no longer soft and manicured, twisted the hem of her shirt. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I just watched her, not rushing her, not leaving. After a long, painful silence, she seemed to deflate. Her shoulders slumped. In a small voice, she said, "Could you lend me some money? I'm hungry." One of my friends couldn't help it and let out a short, sharp laugh. Diana's head sank even lower. I pulled the cash from my wallet, laid it on her cart, and picked up one of the knitted roses. Then I walked past her and got into my car. Through the window, I saw my friends do the same, each one walking up, putting down some cash, and taking a small toy. Diana just stood there, staring down at the money, her body trembling slightly. I looked away. "Let's go, Mr. Henderson," I said to the driver. As we drove past the mall where we'd had that date, I saw a young couple walking down the street, laughing as they each held one arm of a giant teddy bear. People smiled as they passed them, admiring their happiness. And that's when I remembered. It was Diana's birthday. I had been there for 21 of her birthdays. I had watched her make the same wish over every single cake. For Frank and Diana to be together forever. But a lifetime is long, and you have to live the whole thing to measure it. No one can promise they won't change their mind along the way. People aren't static. We change as the years go by. The roses outside Diana's old window died and were replaced with something else. Her bedroom was redecorated for the new heir. That giant teddy bear was eventually found in a dumpster near the campus, discarded just like our relationship. No one talks about that disastrous engagement party anymore. Like Diana herself, it's been mostly forgotten. I try to remember the girl she used to be, and I can't pinpoint the exact moment she changed. But sometimes, people just change in ways you can never predict. The bright, vibrant Diana Wallace was worn away by the harsh realities of life, leaving behind a tired, aged Mrs. Leo. I wonder if she ever resents that younger version of herself, the one who so boldly chose her own path. I wonder if she ever regrets the choices she made. I feel a pang of something, maybe pity, but that's all.